You don't know a thing about a story, tell it wrong all the time. Don't know a thing.
I'd like to welcome you to the second episode of my book review video series, and this is episode number 2. I am going to be reviewing this book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's titled Between the World and Me. Now, this book is the 2015 National Book Award winner, as you can see over here. And I would also like to say, I would like to add that this was a very hard to read book for me personally because of the issues being talked about. We're gonna get into it. The issues are so sensitive, and the way that it's been written, it was written in a very poetic way. Yeah, so it was very hard to grasp. So like the videos before, actually like the video before, because this is my second. So like the video before, I will divide this video into 6 parts, and in the first part I'm going to talk about who Ta-Nehisi is, what type of person he is, what other books has he written, and then later on we're gonna get to the end of the video like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. About the author. Who is Ta-Nehisi Coates? Ta-Nehisi Coates was born on the 30th of September in 1975 in Baltimore, USA. Ta-Nehisi Coates is an American author and journalist. He attended Howard University, aka the Mecca, and he was a national correspondent for the Atlantic up until July 2018. He is a hip-hop enthusiast, as can be seen from all the hip-hop references he makes in this book, right? Including a nice shout-out on page 26.
Yo, it's poison. Ecstasy, coke, you say it's love, it is poison. Schools where I learned they should be burned, it is poison. Physicians prescribing us medicine, which is poison. Doctors
and actually, he does say that he did try to write poetry, rap, and poetry at certain stages of his life, sort of like myself. And he is very well read, and he was taught to approach things in an investigative way. How his writing had to answer a series of questions, and how this was his earliest act of interrogation and consciousness. In my own words, I would say he is to the Atlantic what Malcolm Gladwell is to the New Yorker. In 2012, he received the Hillman Prize for Opinion and Analysis Journalism, the National Magazine Award in 2013, the 2014 George Paak Award for his Atlantic cover story, The Case for Reparation, the 2015 MacArthur Fellows Program, and the same year, and the 2015 National Book Award for Nonfiction. The sticker over here, right? And this is not to say that these are the only awards that he's received, right? So, books by Ta-Nehisi Coates, the books that he's written. The first one is titled The Beautiful Struggle, A Father, Two Sons, and an Unlikely Road to Manhood, and it's a memoir. The second one is this book over here, the book that I'm going to be reviewing. It's titled Between the World and Me. The third is We Were 8 Years in Power, an American tragedy. Some other works include Black Panther. He's the writer of the comic book series about the Black Panther, drawn by Brian Stilfreeze and published by Marvel Comics. He also wrote a spin-off of Black Panther titled Black Panther and the Crew, which ran for 6 issues. What type of praise is this book received, right? So I'm going to read a review by Toni Morrison at the back of the book over here. She says, I've been wondering who might fill in the intellectual void that plagued me after James Baldwin died. Clearly, it is Ta-Nehisi Coates. The language of Between the World and Me, like Coates' journey, is visceral, eloquent, and beautifully redemptive. And its examination of the hazards and hopes of black male life is as profound as it is revelatory. This is required reading. So this section of the video is the literature references section. The title of this book is borrowed from a poem of the same name by Richard Wright. In the poem, a black man discovers the site of a lynching and becomes incapacitated with fear, creating a barrier between himself and the world. After he found out that the title of this book is borrowed from a Richard Wright poem, I read the poem and I was really appalled. The poem is absolutely visual. Another person who makes reference to this book is an artist whose name is Skyzoo. He makes a slick reference to it on the song titled Forever and a Day off the album In Celebration of Us that was released in 2018. One of my favorite hip-hop albums in 2018.
Infinitely caught in a weave of trying to dip around what they breathe before you leave, or climbing in and out of a scene they call elite, or lining up whoever's between the world and me, or me and the world, whichever first.
Black Thought also makes a reference to this book on the song titled Nobody by Rapsody, and it's from the album Layla's Wisdom. I think that album is also from 2018. I listened to it heavily.
Between the world and me like Ta-Nehisi Coates. Nobody know the artist, Mr. Ta-Nehisi Coates. Laughing at boards, they grasping at straws to sniff the dope. Pimp been engaged for ages, we should probably elope.
There's an episode titled Hope on the show Blackish, where they talked about the book. I've heard about the show Blackish, but I've never really brought myself to watch it. So I watched this episode when a friend was watching it. So found out the show is quite interesting also. They talk about some real issues though. The fifth is one of my favorite TV shows. It's Jeopardy, and this author, Ta-Nehisi, and this book, they've been referred to in several episodes. They've appeared as clues on the show. If you've seen Jeopardy before, then I think you know what I'm talking about. Because of the way in which this book has been written, an epistolary or letter to his son Samora, the number of characters or main characters are what you would expect from a non-fiction book. I would say there are three main characters in this book. The first is to whom this book is written. His, at the time of writing, 15-year-old son, who's named after Samora Torre. The second is his friend Prince Carmen Jones, who is first introduced on page 63 as... The thing to understand about Prince Jones is that he exhibited the whole of his given name. He was handsome, he was tall and brown, built thin and powerful like a wide receiver. He was the son of a prominent doctor. He was born again, a state I did not share but respected. He was kind, generosity radiated off of him, and he seemed to have a facility with everyone and everything. And this can never be true, but there are people who pull the illusion off without effort, and Prince Jones was one of them. Lastly, the third character who shapes this book is Dr. Mabel Jones, Prince's mother, who is first introduced on page 78. Okay, so in this section of the video, we're going to talk about the book itself. Now, this book is influenced by James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. Although I've never read a James Baldwin book from front to back, I'm quite familiar to his style of writing. I could see some similarities between the two authors' train of thought. So what is this book about? The short answer is, it's a letter to his teenage son about 1. The feelings, 2. The symbolism, and 3. The realities associated with being black in America. It's a book that makes great emphasis on losing and owning your body, as is shown on page 35. While describing his experience listening to Malcolm X's tapes, he says, "I would buy tapes of Malcolm's speeches, the message to the grassroots, the ballad of the bullet, down at everyone's place, a black bookstore on North Avenue, and play them on my Walkman. Here was all the angst I felt before the heroes of February, distilled and quotable. Don't give up your life. Preserve your life," he would say. "And you've got to give it up. Make it even, Stephen. This was not boasting. It was a declaration of equality rooted not in better angels of the intangible spirit, but in the sanctity of the black body. You preserved your life because your life, your body, was as good as anyone's, because your blood was as precious as jewels, and it should never be sold for magic, for spirituals inspired by the unknowable hereafter. You do not give up your precious body to the billy clubs of Birmingham sheriffs, nor to the insidious gravity of the streets. Black is beautiful, which is to say that the black body is beautiful, and that black hair must be guarded against the torture of processing and lying, that black skin must be guarded against bleach, that our noses and mouths must be protected against modern surgery. To him, according to this book, racism is more than just the color of your skin. As is shown on page 7 and 8, Americans believe in the reality of race as a defined, indubitable feature of the natural world. Racism, the need to ascribe bone-deep features to people and then humiliate, reduce, and destroy them, inevitably follows from this intolerable condition. In this way, racism is rendered as the innocent daughter of Mother Nature. But race is the child of racism, not the father. And the process of naming the people has never been a matter of genealogy and physiognomy so much as one of hierarchy. This is the new idea at the heart of these new people who have been brought up hopelessly, tragically, deceitfully to believe that they are white. The new people were something else before they were white. Catholic, Corsican, Welsh, Mennonite, Jewish, and if all our national hopes have any fulfillment, then there will have to be something else again. Perhaps they will truly become American and create a novel basis for their myths. I cannot call it. As for now, it must be said that the process of washing the disparate tribes white, the elevation of the belief in being white, was not achieved through wine tasting and ice cream socials, but rather through the pillaging of life, liberty, labor, and land, through the flaying of backs, the chaining of limbs, the strangling of dissidents, the distraction of families, the rape of mothers, the sale of children, and various other acts meant, first and foremost, to deny you and me the right to secure and govern our own bodies. The new people are not original in this. Perhaps there has been, at some point in history, some great power whose elevation was exempt from the violent exploitation of other human bodies. If there has been, I have yet to discover it. On the same issue on page 42, he says, "White America is a syndicate arrayed to protect its exclusive power to dominate and control our bodies. Sometimes this power is direct, as in lynching, and sometimes it is insidious, as in redlining. But however it appears, the power of domination and exclusion is central to the belief in being white, and without it, white people would cease to exist for one of reasons. There will surely always be people with straight hair and blue eyes, as there has been for all history. But some of these straight-haired people with blue eyes have been black." Moving away from the short answer, I'd like to direct you to the longer answer, the longer version of what I think this book is about. So this book is divided into 3 chapters. A poem by Sonia Sanchez precedes the first chapter. Another by Amiri Baraka precedes the second. The last chapter is introduced by a golden epigram that reads, "And have brought humanity to the edge of oblivion, because they think they are white." I found how he described love and the women that came into his life very poetic on pages 57, 58, and 60. He says, "In my second year at Howard, I fell hard for a lovely girl from California, who was then in the habit of floating around the campus in a long skirt and head wrap. I remember her large brown eyes, her broad mouth, and cool voice. I would see her out on the yard on those spring days, yell her name, and then throw up my hands as though signaling a touchdown, but wider like the W in "What up?" That was how we did it then. My father was from Bangalore, and where was that? And what were the laws out here? I did not yet understand the import of my own questions. What I remember is my ignorance. I remember watching her eat with her hands and feeling wholly uncivilized with my fork. I remember wondering why she wore so many scars. I remember her going to India for spring break and returning with a bindi on her head and photos of her smiling Indian cousins. I told her, "Nigga, you black," because that's all I had back then. But her beauty and stillness broke the balance in me. In my small apartment, she kissed me, and the ground opened up, swallowed me, buried me right there in that moment. How many awful poems did I write thinking of her? I now know what she was to me. The first glimpse of a space bridge, a wormhole, a galactic portal of this bound and blind planet. She had seen other worlds, and she held the lineage of other worlds spectacularly in the verso of her black body. I fell again a short time later, and in similar fashion for another girl, tall with long flowing dreadlocks. She was raised by a Jewish mother in a small, nearly all-white town in Pennsylvania, and now at Howard, ranged between women and men, asserted this not just with pride, but as though it was normal, as though it were normal, as though she were normal. I know it's nothing to you now, but I was from a place, America, where cruelty toward humans who loved as their deepest instincts instructed was a kind of law. I was amazed. This was something black people did? Yes, and they did it, and they did so much more. The girl with the long dreads lived in a house with a man, a Howard professor, who was married to a white woman. The Howard professor slept with men. His wife slept with women, and the two of them slept with each other. They had a little boy who must be off to college by now. Faggot was a word I had employed all my life, and now here they were, the cabal, the coven, the others, the monsters, the outsiders, the faggots, the dykes, dressed in all their human clothes. Their ordinary moments, answering the door, cooking in the kitchen, dancing to Adina Howard, assaulted me and expanded my notion of the human spectrum. She taught me to love in new ways. Finally, he beautifully concludes the first chapter as follows. He says, "The privileges of being black are not always self-evident. We are, as Derek Bell once wrote, the faces at the bottom of the well. But there really is wisdom down there. And that wisdom accounts for much of the good in my life. And my life down here accounts for you. None of us were promised to end the fight on our fist raised to the sky. We could not control our enemy's number, strength, nor weaponry. Sometimes you just got it backward. But whether you fought or ran, you did it together, because that is the part that was in our control. What we must never do is willingly hand over our own bodies or the bodies of our friends. That is the wisdom. We knew we did not lay down the direction of the street, but despite that, we could and must fashion the way of our walk. And that is the deeper meaning of the name, that the struggle in and of itself has meaning." In this section, I would like to talk about what most resonated with me. Aside from the seriousness of the subjects presented in this book, there are some sections I found humorous. For example, on page 18, while describing a certain boy's near-death experience here, he says, "I was 11 years old, standing out in the parking lot in front of the 7-Eleven, watching a crew of other boys standing near the street. They yelled and gestured at who? Another boy, young like me. He stood there, almost smiling, gamely throwing up his hands. He had already learned the lesson he would teach me that day, that his body was in constant jeopardy. Who knows what brought him to that knowledge? The projects, a drunken stepfather, an older brother concussed by police, a cousin pinned in the city jail. That he was outnumbered did not matter because the whole world had outnumbered him long ago. And what do numbers matter? This was a war for the possession of his body, and that would be the war of his whole life. I stood there for some seconds. So this is the humor section. He's talking about something as serious as death. So, and then he throws in some elements of humor. He says, I stood there for some seconds, marveling at the older boys' beautiful sense of fashion. They all wore ski jackets, the kind which, in my day, mothers put on layaway in September, then piled up overtime hours so as to have the thing wrapped and ready for Christmas. So this is what I found most humorous. On another page, on page 26, where he describes how the school system failed him, he says, I remember sitting in my 7th grade French class and not having an idea why I was there. I did not know any French people, and nothing around me suggested I ever would. France was a rock rotating in another galaxy, around another sun, in another sky that I would never cross. Why precisely was I sitting in this classroom? The question was never answered. I was a curious boy, but the schools were not concerned with my curiosity. They were concerned with compliance. So I found this very interesting because living abroad, like I'm living in a foreign country, so back when I was in primary school, I never imagined myself ever having to learn a second language. Like I can speak Chinese and I can speak English and some other local languages. So if you were to ask me at the time if I would ever be in a position where, suppose I had some Chinese lessons, I never would have imagined I would be able to speak Chinese, right? So I could relate to this section of the book, and I found it humorous when he says, I didn't know any French people, right? Nothing around me suggested I ever would, so I found it quite humorous. Aside from the humor, there were other things that really touched me. Like I could feel when they really touched me. How he spoke to his son is a way that I would like to be able to speak to my children when I have children of my own. So he says, on Blacks Living in America, on page 11 and 12, he says, what I told you is what your grandparents tried to tell me, that this is your country, but this is your world, but this is your body, and you must find some way to live within all of it. I tell you now that the question of how one should live within a black body, within a country lost in the dream, is the question of my life. And the pursuit of this question, I have found ultimately answers itself. On page 21, he says, before I could discover, before I could escape, I had to survive. And this could only mean a clash with the streets, by which I mean not just physical blocks, nor simply the people packed into them, but the array of lethal puzzles and strange perils that seem to rise from the Oxford itself. The streets transform every ordinary day into a series of trick questions, and every incorrect answer risks a beatdown, a shooting, or a pregnancy. No one survives unscathed, and yet the heat that springs from the constant danger from a lifestyle of near-death experience is thrilling. This is what the rappers mean when they pronounce themselves addicted to the streets or in love with the game. Now, the contents of page 68 are very touching. He says, he tells his son, he says, there was more out there than I had ever hoped for, and I wanted you to have it. I wanted you to know that the world in its entirety could never be found in the schools alone, nor on the streets alone, nor in the trophy case. I wanted you to claim the whole world as it is. I wanted Toy Store is the toy store of the Zulus to immediately be obvious to you. And yet, even in this cosmopolitan, which I felt the old power of ancestry, because I had come to knowledge of the maker that my ancestors made, and I was compelled toward the maker by the struggle that my ancestors made. The struggle is in your name, Samoan. You were named for Samori Tori, who struggled against French colonizers for the right to his own black body. He died in captivity, but the profits of that struggle and others like it are ours, even when the object of our struggle, as is so often true, escapes our grasp. He continues on page 69, he says, I have raised you to respect every human being singly, and you must extend that same respect into the past. Slavery is not an indefinable mass of flesh. It is a particular specific enslaved woman whose mind is active as your own, whose range of feeling is as vast as your own, who prefers the way the light falls in one particular spot in the woods, who enjoys fishing where the water eddies in a nearby stream, who loves her mother in her own complicated way, thinks her sister talks too loud, has a favorite cousin, a favorite season, who excels at dressmaking and knows inside herself that she is as intelligent and capable as anyone. Okay, so finally, to end this section of what most resonated with me is text from page 71 here. Actually, I read this book like the first time that I read this book was perhaps 2 years or 3 years ago. And if there's anything that I remember the most is the text of page 71. He says, so you must wake up every morning knowing that no promise is unbreakable. Least of all the promise of waking up at all. This is not despair. These are the preferences of the universe itself. Verbs over nouns, actions over states, struggle over hope. The birth of a better world is not ultimately up to you. Though I know each day there are grown men and women who tell you otherwise. The world needs saving precisely because of the actions of these same men and women. I am not a cynic. I love you, and I love the world, and I love it more with every new inch I discover. But you are a black boy, and you must be responsible for your body in a way that other boys cannot know. Indeed, you must be responsible for the worst actions of other black bodies, which somehow will always be assigned to you. And this is not reducible to just you. The women around you must be responsible for their bodies in a way that you will never know. You have to make your peace with the chaos, but you cannot lie.
What is it like to inhabit a black body and find a way to live within it? And how can we all honestly reckon with this fraud history and free ourselves from its burden? Americans have built an empire on the idea of race, a falsehood that damages us all but falls most heavily on the bodies of black women and men. Beautifully woven from a personal narrative between the world and me, clearly illuminates the past, embracingly, right?
Yeah.
Confronts our present and offers a transcendent vision for a way forward.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
nice.
This is your country, this is your world, this is your body. You must find some way to live within the all of it. In a profound work that provokes from the biggest question about American history and ideals to most intimate concerns of a father for his son. This is a required reading. Ta-Nehisi.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this book is about
This book is by this guy.
the American author.
Yeah, American.
He's
author. He's American. His name is Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Okay.
He's the writer of the comic series The Black Panther, drawn by Brian Steele Freeze and published by
Marvel Comics. He also write a spin-off
Yeah.
of Black Panther titled Black Panther and the Crew, which run for 6 issues. So that's it. I think this is a praise. Right?
Yeah. Hello everyone, my name is Sholom Shota,
I'm Jackie.
and we're inviting you together, man.
Okay, we're inviting you
to come and experience this.
summer English classes, right? Oh my.
We don't go out, can we stress away? We've been burning brighter every day. We don't go out, can we stress away? We've been burning brighter every day. You don't know a thing about a story, tell it wrong all the time. Don't know a thing about a glory, wanna steal my baby shine, my friend. Wanna know why